Just a few housekeeping notes. Thanks for keeping your phones on silent. There will be time for a Q&A, so get your questions ready. And if you haven't yet picked up your pre-ordered book or you'd like to buy a book, you can do so at the desk over there after the event. We're here tonight to celebrate the release of Verity, Vox, and the Curse of Foxfire with author Dawn Martin in conversation with the returning Kelly Andrew. Kelly Andrew is the New York Times bestselling author of Your Blood, My Bones. She lost her hearing when she was 4 years old, and she's been dreaming up stories in the silence ever since. She lives in New England with her husband and 2 daughters and a very grouchy Boston Terrier. Dawn Martin, yeah.
And one more dog.
Oh.
One more dog, yeah. We'll talk about him.
Surprise dogs as well. Dawn Martin was born in Appalachia and now lives with his husband on a horse ranch outside of Chicago, where he produces his inquisitive interview podcast, Head on Fire. Verity, Vox, and the Curse of Foxfire, welcome. The rules here are simple. Don't look in the trees, don't whistle in the woods at night, don't answer if you hear your name called, and remember, everything once. Verity Vox is a witch in training who has never met a problem her spells can't solve. But when a cryptic plea for help sends her to the forgotten coal mining town of Foxfire, she soon learns even magic has its limits. Here to tell us more are Kelly Andrew and Dawn Martin.
Hi, everyone. Oh no. I should not have been given a microphone. This is too much power. Before we begin, can I take a picture of all of you beautiful people? This is my first time, so you know how when you have your first time, you want to take a picture of it, right? Your first book tour? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. The big wide one. Everybody squeeze in. Nope, you can't do that. I'm going to take one of you and then one of me. Yay! Everybody say Foxfire! Foxfire! Yay. Okay, well, you take one of the 2 of us. Thank you so much.
We're ready.
Okay. Thanks so much. Hi, New York Times bestseller, Kelly Andrew.
Hello, New York Times bestseller. Those were some great introductions, and I do have a million questions that I've been fighting. We've been hanging out for the last few hours, and I have been so good at not asking all of my questions, saving them for now. But before I dive in, pick your brain, and ask you all of my things, do we want to open with a passage that I selected? I came armed with a bunch of lines that I have been wanting to hear, but we think we narrowed it down.
She told me that there's some lines I have to answer for.
Correct.
I love that. So I will say, not every audience gets the same reading. So I tried to mimic some fabulous singers and give every town their own unique experience. So I'm having my conversation partner choose their favorite passage or a specific passage. So you all get a different passage than everybody else. And yours is this one. Even amongst witches, Verity was unique. She'd always had a way of ordering the world about with her voice. It came as naturally to her as a young deer realizing that it can leap over a tall hedge, or a cardinal learning to fly. Poems, nursery rhymes, folk songs, she could harness each. There was a power in words, and that power grew the more those words found a life outside of the writer. When she sang, she could wield that power like a blacksmith wields a hammer, forcing the uneven edges of the world to reform themselves according to her will. She liked older songs, as fewer people were using them these days, and all that forgotten power was sitting there waiting. Despite their differences, all witches share one very important, very powerful characteristic that sets them apart from other magic users. They are not bound to this world. This allows them to do small things, such as make a broom fly, and at the very height of their power, allows them to part the veil separating the various planes of existence and move between the worlds in the blink of an eye. Verity Vox, being a witch in training, was not at the height of her power, nor was she particularly interested in parting any veils, since she had yet to face a situation that couldn't be solved with a song at her wits. Though she did very much enjoy the flying bit. Who wouldn't? Thank you.
I sort of want to jump right in here. I'm going to skip around a little bit. I have some
Okay.
questions, but I do, stemming off of that lovely passage, I want to talk about the way you describe magic in your book. And I think that it is, we talk sometimes as authors about the way the setting can become a character, and then you definitely have the setting, and we'll get to the setting, but the magic is a character in its own right, and you had these lush, descriptive ways of talking about how the world bends and flows around Verity that I just found so alluring as a reader. And what I'm wondering is that something you developed as you wrote, or did you go into the story knowing exactly how you wanted to write and to describe what Verity was doing?
That's a great question, thank you. I knew exactly what I was going to do going into it. So when people ask me, like, what's the magic system for this? I take them out of the fiction aisle, and I walk them over to nonfiction, and I take them to religious studies, and I hand them a book on North American folklore. And I say, this is the magic system. So, so many fantasy novels that involve magic, witches, wizards, all of that. Hi, this is a really good book. You come over here. It's so good. So when we read a lot of fantasy novels, a lot of them are based on European myth, European folklore, European folk magic, European wizardry, and then building off of the fantasy novels that have been formed from there, Arthurian legend and myth and those retellings, and then modern reinterpretations of those and all of that. And I was like, I love those. I've read those. I want something slightly different. So I based all of the magic on very real, very accessible North American folklore, North American folk magic, most specifically folk magic found in Appalachia. If you ever want to know where the magic system comes from, you can read books like New World Witchery by Dr. Corey Thomas Hutchison. He's a folklorist somewhere in this area, actually. But there's a ton of other books, like the actual Foxfire books. There's an entire nonfiction book series that collected the history, the beliefs, the practices, the lore of the people who lived and died in Appalachia. And there's ghost stories, and there's folklore. And as my mom would say, she's like, oh, well, this isn't magic, this is just the way things are done. This is just how stuff is done. Like you would read about, specifically in Appalachia, there's this thing called granny magic, so I see nodding heads. But they would never say that they were doing like magic or witchcraft or something. They would these are just the things that you do. I mean, if you want your laundry to die, if you want your laundry to dry, you whistle up the wind. That's just what you do. And there's all of those kinds of things. So Verity sings her magic. There are other members of the coven, and they all do other things. And maybe one day you'll get to meet them. But Verity's singing of her spells is also harkens back to a lot of the people that lived in Appalachia from the time where the book is set. Sorry about that. Come from like Ireland, Scotland, that part of the world where singing is a huge part of folklore. It's a huge part of folktale. There's a lot of deities and folk heroes that sang their magic. So that was always intentional the entire time.
I love it. And that kind of leads me into, I'm also a big fan of all things cryptid, North American cryptid tales. I've got the cryptid coffee book, table books all over my house, and I was very excited to see snallygasters and a weepy squonk, and you had without spoiling, a Germanic omen of death that was so beautifully woven into the story that I gasped when I figured it out. And
I'm so glad.
I did, it got me.
I really thought, has anybody read the book yet? Okay. I will not spoil.
Don't spoil.
But I
This is a good
really
moment.
thought that I had given it away. There's a lot of stuff that I thought that I gave away pretty early that I was like, oh,
I
look
kind
at me,
of-
clever writer.
I would say there's something, he's laying something down here, and I can think I know where this thread is going, but it was very well done. And
Thank you.
I loved seeing all of this, sort of these cryptid folk tales that I grew up reading and being told by my older family members woven into the story. And we kind of talked about it already, how the magic building and the magic system and the world building is from these folk tales. What I'm wondering is, obviously a lot of the story is your own creation as well. How did you handle the marriage between folklore that exists and these new characters and history and story that you've built as the story itself?
So, I was born in West Virginia. My dad's side of the family is from there. My people go back to like the late 1700s, I found out through researching this book. I was born there. I spent a lot of my childhood there. I went back for all my holidays. I spent all of my summers there, months at a time. I went to college there. It has always been the most beautiful place on earth to me. Now, I notoriously have not traveled very far. I just, for the first time today, saw the ocean. So it's not like I've been a lot of places. But West Virginia, those hills, they're older than the rings of Saturn. They're very, very, very old, and they're beautiful, and there is something deeply mystical and awesome in like that original true sense of the word awesome when you're standing there. And when you're standing there, like I went to Vulcan, the town that the book is based on, and when you're standing there in that town, in the heart of that valley, at the base of that mountain, looking up into those hills, and it's just silent in a way that I cannot express to you how silence can sound. When you're so far removed from everything, it's really easy to see how there could be something in those hills that science hasn't labeled yet, that the people know but can't prove. And growing up with that level of just like awe of a place, I think the fact and fiction of it just gets woven together. If you grew up in Appalachia, you have family from there, the little lines on the back of the book, don't look in the trees, don't whistle in the woods at night, don't answer if you hear your name called. There's a lot of those. And it's just what you do. It's just how you live. And I think that that was my challenge as the writer, is to be able to give that to you all if that wasn't where you're from. Is to invite you to be part of the family, is to invite you on the front porch and tell you the story and let it be yours. It was just trying to fold that fact and fiction. And I loved using the cryptids because, once again, so many of our fantasy stories are European settings. So we know what a unicorn is. We know what mermaids are. We know what all those things are. But do you know what a hodag is? Do you know what it means when I tell you that one time Verity cheered up a squonk? Like, that's a big deal.
No, I love it, and I think that you wove it in such a intriguing way that you're writing for kids and for teens, and I feel like it's you've written in such a way that it feels like part of the fantasy world, but it would also encourage them to go look it up.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you because I know that you also have kids, and and that's always a conversation with an editor. And so, like, how much do you explain, and how much do you just leave there on the page and trust that those curious, inquisitive minds are going to, if they want to, go look it up? And for me as a kid, I was that voracious reader that I wanted to go look it up.
Right.
I liked to be set down into a world, and this is just the world as it is. And I get to learn the rules as I go, and I get to experience it, and it's that adventure. I don't necessarily need to be told absolutely every single thing. But I love the idea that kids are going and hunting for this and looking it up if it's there and connecting all of that. And that's why all of the songs are real songs. They're all real, like you can go look all of them up, and they all have history, and you can look all that up. And I wanted that to be there for those young readers.
That's interesting. That was going to be my next question, is because you write poetry.
I do.
You do, fabulous poetry.
Thank you.
So my question was, obviously I recognized a great deal of the songs, there's some nursery rhymes, there's some less familiar ones. Were all of them existing songs, or were
Every single song, every single poem in the book is a real song or poem, which is why when we were doing the audiobook, I was so excited because I wanted to hear them because they're all real songs.
Yeah.
But did you know that you can't do that in an audiobook? You can't sing the songs in an audiobook because that's a whole different set of rights. Now, in my very specific instance, all of my songs are so old they would very much be in the public domain. So I could have maybe fought for an exception, but like, yeah. So Jen can't sing the songs in the audiobook. She like reads them in a sing-songy way.
Interesting, so she can recite them, but she can't.
She can recite them as words. She can't sing them because when it becomes a performance, then that's a whole different thing. I know.
Interesting. I would not have expected that, especially if they're in the public domain. Well, that does.
I know. Some of them, like, there were some instances where, Verity tweaks a word here or there to be more specific to the situation at hand, but all of them are real songs. All of them are real songs and poems.
That being said, what was the process? Obviously, everything you did in the book feels very intentional. All your research is clearly, you've done your research into what you're putting in the book, and it means something, and you're guiding the reader into a certain direction. So what was the process of researching the music and deciding what song fit? Because the songs you use for Verity feel very different than the songs you use for Earl.
Well, Earl uses Bible verses.
Yes, that I noticed.
And that is, and that also has ties to Appalachia. We can get into that in a second. This is where having a lot of friends and having grown up in the church kind of helped. So there were a lot of hymns in the book because the book is for kids who found themselves on the on the wrong end of Scripture, but the right end of choir, which is why Earl uses Scripture and Verity uses hymns. But having a lot of friends, having a lot of folklorists, having a really strong bench of experts, and just a long amount of years with religious trauma. So I'm very well versed in that hymnal.
I think.
And then,
right?
Google.
Yeah, sure. Google's your friend, right? But you had a vibe you were chasing.
Oh yeah. The song couldn't just be any song where the words might fit. It needed to either have a history that kind of tied into it, or it needed to have the right vibe. Like if you get to the end, a lot. I've received so many DMs and emails from people that are like, "Your big showdown was the Master, the Tempest is Raging. Where the hell did you pull that out from?"
Very nicely done.
Thank you. But I will say, I was more proud of going through, so I had some folklorists on speed dial, and I got this very old copy of an annotated Mother Goose.
Okay.
And it had not only the version, like it's really old, like it's huge, so it has the version of the, nursery rhyme or whatever that you're used to, and then it has every other version that it's ever been, and then in the footnotes is all of these like people with doctorates in folklore telling you what this was used for and why and how this came to be and what this is in conversation with. Like, okay, so this nursery rhyme is actually an indictment of the king, and this does da-da-da-da-da, and I was like, yeah, so some of that helped to inform it. So some of that backstory.
Take a look at this book. I would love that.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's great.
Let me see. I think we're covering a lot of ground here.
Sorry, I talk fast.
Oh, this is great. I'm learning so much. I feel like this is fantastic because you don't always read a book you love and they get to pick the brain.
Oh, you
of the
like my
author
book?
the next day.
Thank you. Did y'all hear that? She said she liked my book. Thank you.
So,
Oh, she did say love.
Here, let me see. I would like to circle back to Verity. She's the star of the book here. She is a witch in training. And something that I really loved about her was, sometimes you get these books where I think that the character is very, in a pursuit of making a strong protagonist, we make the protagonist a a little too strong or a little too perfect at everything, and then there's no growth. And what I loved about Verity is that you didn't sacrifice any of her confidence, her courage, her cleverness, or her capabilities, but you still allowed her to make mistakes and to be wrong, and then to grow from those mistakes and to become stronger. And I think there's even a quote in the book that I'm going to butcher now, where she talks about how you can't learn anything when you have too much power. It's basically kind of my very bad
That's the last thing
paraphrasing
she
of it.
says to Earl, something along
Yes.
those lines. Yeah.
Yes, she's learned, whereas he hasn't. And I'm very curious to know what the process of writing her character was. Did she pop into your head fully formed, or did you sort of discover her arc as you were writing the story?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. So Verity Box and the Curse of Foxfire began as a short story. So I have this podcast, and every October I write an original short story, and it has turned into, it becomes a full cast audio production because I hate myself. Every year, which is a lot to undertake. So I write an original short story and then cast and then produce and then edit it. Anyways, Verity was one of the first ones of those. And when I was writing it, I always knew there was more story. I knew about the bridge, I knew about the flood, I knew all of it. And in that version, you do hear the songs because I didn't know. Oh well. I want those people to come and sue me from 1736. But no. I always had her. I do think, I will say, my editor is here in the audience, and that was a lot of that. We need to see her fail a little bit more. Those were wonderful notes, well given, that I listened to, and that kind of helped that middle section, I think. It wasn't ever that she triumphed too easily, it's that we needed to make the magic a little bit more difficult for her. But about her confidence as a character, when I grew up a comic book kid. You know, my favorite comic book character is Jean Grey, who is like the ultimate example of when we give women too much power, we have to punish them for the power that we gave them. For some reason, like Jean Grey gets too powerful and too strong, and so she must die. Several times. Like, it's kind of her thing. They're doing it to the Scarlet Witch. They did, like, every time a female character gets too powerful, she must die and she must suffer for it. Male characters get away with all sorts of horrible things, and they're fine. They're fine. So I did not want Verity to be a character. I wanted to give kids a character, specifically a female character, to look to who is always strong, who is always powerful, who is always confident. This book is not a lot of coming-of-age stories, especially magical coming-of-age stories. Their character starts with no power, and a lot of the journey is learning to master the powers until they've mastered the powers and can defeat the big bad at the end. She's already done that. She's good. She's got all the magic. Her thing isn't a journey of discovering power. Her journey is a journey of discovering how to use that. And whether or not magic and power are the same thing. And Bethany Baptiste, a mutual friend of ours, she didn't write this in a book, but she said it in a panel at YAM a few years ago. Yeah, I think you were. And I wrote it down, and I texted her this week, and I said, can I use that in possible future books if they ever happen? And she said, yes, you can. So I always quote with permission. But she said that witches have magic, but humans have power.
Yes, I remember her saying that. That was it's a good line.
It's a very good line. And I was like, I will be crediting you, but I will be stealing it with credit. So that I think is the journey, and I think hearing that when I was still in the developmental stage, because I was writing a scene, I was writing the first confrontation with Earl when YAM happened, and I took that advice and I went home and I tweaked things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Curious to know what it looked like before, because I love
Heavy.
All right.
That first battle was a big chunky thing. We had to chop it up and move it around a little bit.
I love it. No, I love to see all the iterations that a book goes through as you're working on it. And I do kind of want to talk about, that kind of leads into my next question about power and magic. And, I'm sure a lot of people are here tonight because they're fantasy readers, maybe fantasy writers. And if you're someone who dabbles in fantasy, that magic comes with a cost, right?
Love a dabbler.
Love a dabbler. And we know that magic comes with a price, right? There is always a cost to power. And how did you deal with creating stakes in the book? I mean, you're writing YA, right? There is a line you can't cross. You're making the book accessible and digestible to teens and to young readers, but you still want to make the stakes heavy enough that the characters feel them. Like what was that like balancing?
I think that's where the benefit of the book being grounded in reality, in real history, in the stakes not being magical stakes. The stakes are the survival of a town, of a real town that really needed to survive, that really was trapped for years and forgotten about by the state government, by the federal government, that had to make their own deal with the devil to survive, to get by. And I think that continuing to remind myself that the crux of the book is about people that we forget when we decide they're not important enough. I'm not gonna cry. Continue to help me make the stakes correct for the reader. Because, the wizard is going to, create an eternal storm, but I don't know. But when you make the stakes hunger, when you make the stakes survival, when you make the stakes real, I think it's easy to ground that and to give that to a reader and to help them understand. Because when something, even if it's fantasy, if it's based in truth, it will always ring true to the reader.
Absolutely, that's a great answer. I love that one. Thank you. I do want to pivot slightly back to craft just for a minute, because for those of you who may not know, Don also writes nonfiction.
I do.
It has.
Where Did Everybody Go? Comes out this November.
Get that ready.
Sorry.
It does, and that's what I want to talk about, because you were writing these sometimes the same time, and that's very, very different. So
I wrote that in between edit rounds of this book.
So
this is the thing I wrote while I was keeping my hands busy.
So you were right. You were busy, right? No. So I do want to talk about. I want to make a point about your prose, and then I have a question.
Okay.
First of all, the prose in this book is. Do you ever watch an animated movie and there's like a food scene, and you really want that, like the Spirited Away in the beginning? Like, that is how I feel about your prose in this book. Like, I wanted to literally eat it. It was so good. But then I do not understand, it doesn't compute to me, as someone who does not write nonfiction, and no one would ever want to write nonfiction, how are you getting in the mindset to get in the voice for this book while also, separating out the two different, very distinctly different voices?
Oh gosh. I'm a complex person. I grew up, my first literary language was poetry.
Okay.
And my first 2 books were collections of poetry, which nobody reads. So, you're forgiven if you haven't read them. But I think that on one of these tour stops, I was in conversation with my uncle, who's an author in his own right. He writes beautiful. One day I hope to grow up and be as good of a writer as him. He said, and I didn't know that he was going to say this, he said, "I think that you think in poetry." And I was like, that's correct, but I've never heard it put that way, and that's going to make me cry. So I think that the reason why all of these voices work with me is because poets look at the world just slightly differently, and I've always seen the world through connections, through people, through how we are with one another, with who we could be with one another, and why we aren't other people with one another, if that makes any kind of sense. And I think there's also just a deep sense, I just also hold a deep sense of curiosity and empathy. And I think all of that just kind of ties together, and sometimes that's witches in Appalachia, and sometimes it's deep dives about the loneliness epidemic. So it's all one big weird kid that I guess is writing like one day they're going to take my pen away.
It all meshes in there.
Yeah,
It's all your
somehow.
thoughts.
I don't know.
No, I love
I have
that.
this sociology degree, so I
That
might as well
helps.
use it.
Right, put it to good work. I do want to talk about, I think, this was in the brief bio that was read, maybe, or maybe I'm making that up, but the idea that everything wants permeates the story.
Yes.
And
That was originally a throwaway line.
are you serious?
Yeah, that was originally a throwaway line that a character named Mother Downey says, who you never see again in this book. So that was originally a throwaway line in the original draft, and all the beta readers were like, "That's a killer line," and I was like, "Oh well, you'll write something, and you're like, oh, look at me being later on everybody's like, well, that's a line, and you're like, look at me being a genius, and then like, oh, well, this is now a through line throughout the rest of the book.
Interesting, because I wrote here, bone-chilling hook.
Thank you.
Which is, but like it is, it's really, it grips you in the way that you use it in there. So I wanted to
And then
hear
Earl
about.
later on says that he is a creature of want.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is very tied innately into the themes of the story. So that's interesting. Are you a plotter or a pantser? This is just for me now.
So, yeah, plantser. So I always had the entire outline. I knew exactly what was going to happen in the book. But as far as like, I have no idea about your craft. But I know some people, like, they are like chapter by chapter, like fully fleshed out outlines. I knew where I was going.
Yeah.
I didn't always know entirely how I was going to get there, but I always knew the main beats of the novel.
Okay.
And I've always had all of Verity's story completely mapped out in my head.
Sure.
But yeah, parts of that
Okay.
were discovery.
Discover like this was sort of something that you fleshed out later on.
Yeah,
Something
I mean,
that-
but sometimes you'll put something on a page, and it's kind of your subconscious being like, well, here's the theme of the book.
Yeah, you don't realize until you're reading back through and it's playing out on
Yeah.
a page in front of you, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Let
I'm a
me stick
genius.
those words in other people's mouths too. Now it looks intentional.
Pretend like I didn't just write this at 2 a.m. during a crash drafting session. I meant it all along. So, okay, very interesting. I have 2 more questions, mostly fun questions for me. So you guys have to bear with me while I ask all my fun questions that I've been waiting to ask you all day. Just from reading your book, I feel like you and I have a lot of the same formative television. I have a list here, you can't look at it. And
We have so many similar experiences that I didn't even realize we had.
I
We
know.
both have like juvenile justice backgrounds.
yes,
It's
I
crazy.
know, it's wild. We
Wild.
ended up here. We
Isn't
need
it?
to discuss this a little bit more
Yes.
in depth. But for now, I would like to know, I'm assuming you had some inspiration, some formative pieces of media that informed this story, whether when you were young or recently, and I would love to hear what some of those films or movies or books were.
And I give homages to like all of them. I wanted to sort of create a world in which every witch you've ever read about is somehow in this world somehow. So like there's nods to Terry Pratchett and the Discworld novels throughout. There's a line that I kind of, for their children, bastardize in the book, where Verity says that she was told by another witch at some point the most important thing that a witch can be is the most dangerous thing in the woods or something,
Yes.
which is fully a Pratchett note. There's a line, and I asked on Threads the other day, and nobody has caught it yet. There's a line that's a twist on something that's said in Halloween Town.
I did not catch that.
And nobody has yet to catch, nobody has caught this line. But what's interesting is that I take it and I break it apart and I put it back together later on, and then it gets real sad when she says it again.
Okay.
So I was kind of proud of that one, and I'm also proud nobody's caught it. Any witch that you can think of is probably somewhere in some kind of way a love letter here. Obviously, yes, there are nods to like Kiki's Delivery Service, and that feels obvious, but there are a lot of other like anime and stories about like traveling witches. So there's the Worst Witch. There is, I think, an anime called The Traveling Witch. There's also the Ashen Witch, and I don't know if that's the actual name of that, but she's a traveling witch. I loved all of those.
I love it.
But yeah, pretty much any.
A love letter to witches.
Yeah, I mean, but I love a witch. I think that when society is in trouble, we reach for witches. Witches sit at the boundaries of society. They're never like deep in the woods. They're always at the edge of the woods.
Sure.
That's where the cottage always is. It's always at the edge. You know, when you read into like folk magic and folklore and myth and legend and stuff, there's what's called a hedge witch who jumps across the hedge and parts the veil and goes beyond. You know, there are these liminal creatures.
Yeah.
You know, they're part of our world and they're part of not. And so that was how I.
Sort of a testament to that.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. And are you a practical magic fan? No. No. No? This is upsetting to me.
Oh, no. Not only am I a practical magic.
Oh, you are?
Not only am I a Nikki fan.
Okay.
Am I a Nikki fan? I have. Has anybody read the Alice Hoffman Practical Magic books? Okay, so you know that there's a lot of food in the books. What you don't know is that Alice Hoffman, just for fun, just for her own friends and family, collected all of the recipes for all of the food in all of the books. And she put it together and self-published her own little recipe book, the Owens Family Recipe Book that she made for her friends and family. And I have the only other copy.
How did you do that? Witchcraft?
Because I am a witch. I am a practical, and I have all of the books.
Amazing.
I reread them. The best is Magic Lessons, which is the first chronologically, but the third published. We can go all day on
Okay.
Alice Hoffman's witches.
So that was on my list.
Yes.
Very good, I got one.
Yes. Oh yeah. I can quote that. One of my when I got my DVD player when I was in high school, a long time ago, my first 2 DVDs were X-Men and Practical Magic, which I
That
feel
makes
like tells
so
you
much sense to me, actually.
everything about me. Yeah, I can
So
quote that
fun.
movie. Very excited for the sequel.
Yes.
Very excited for Lee Pace to be in that sequel.
I know.
Yes.
It's gonna be everything we need, I think.
It's everything I need.
So I think this is my very last question, then we can open it up to audience questions. Magic can do almost anything is used in all these various ways, but it can't brew a cup of tea faster.
No, it can't. It also can't kill mint for some reason.
Yes. What everyday task would you use Verity's magic to complete?
I think everybody wants their house to come alive and clean itself.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, everyone wants to hum a tune and have their entire house clean itself. That's, yeah.
And
I
we can do
mean,
that while you wait for your tea to brew.
well, I'm a coffee person, but yes. And I specifically did not say a thing about brewing coffee faster.
I noticed that.
Yep.
I did like that detail though.
Yeah.
That was her limitation right there.
Yeah. You can't spell tea. Yes, you can. TEA. I love Gilly. But yeah, I would be very boring. I would probably clean my house. All of these mighty, mystical, internal, ethereal powers that I could, part the veil and call the spirits back from the dead, or prophesy the future, or all sorts of things. What would I do? Clean my house.
But think of how many recipes you could make from the Practical Magic book if you didn't have to clean.
Especially if I had that patty cake spell. Spell? How about that? I'm real tired now. That Southern coming out.
That is all of my questions.
Thank you, Kelly Andrew.
I think we can open it to questions.
Yes. Hi. Hello, everybody. Hi. Do you all have any questions for me? Or for Kelly? Or for, I don't know, any of the booksellers that are around here? Yes.
I think in one of your Instagram reels, I think somewhere on your socials, you said that all of the characters were in some way pulled from people you knew in your childhood or your family. Is it like, I'm going to give you a little bit of this person, you're going to get a little bit of this person, you're going to get a little bit of this person, or is it like Gilly is someone?
So the question is, so I've said before on social media that almost all of the characters in the book are pulled either directly or indirectly from my family tree. There's a few intersections of this. outside of the main cast, so I don't have a relative named Verity, at least not that I know of, or Tacita or Gilly, but my great-grandmother's name was May, Lakey May Ballingy. So I gifted May Miller, my great-grandmother's name. All of the other names of the people in Foxfire are named after people in my family tree who lived and died in that area of the country. Pardon me. As far as personality traits go, Gilly is probably the one who is, as one for one, a gifted personality of a treasured friend in my life as exists in the book. The rest of them are pastiches of people that I know and people who exist in that place. Like I grew up in a small town. The book is sort of a love letter to small towns. It's about my own love-hate relationship with small towns. And so there is a directness, an honesty, a forthrightness in the way that people in small towns speak to each other. And so that was kind of, gifted in parts here and there to each of the characters in different ways. The names are them, but Feeny Hazlitt died in the 1800s. I have no idea what her personality was like. And I say that in the acknowledgments. I have no idea if she was as fiery or protective that she is in the book. I hope so. But they are all sort of honoring the people in these places that we tend to forget. Who's next? Yes, ma'am.
As a music educator who grew up in West Virginia and loves traditional music, this felt like a fun. Thank you so much. I will be recommending this to all of my children at school. But
I like the caveat of at school.
don't have any of my own. The ones at school are enough. But I'm not well versed enough in the folklore to have gotten the twists until we got there. But it was an immediate callback to my music history classes. And so I was wondering if you listened to the Schubert piece while you were writing, and if there was any other music that you were listening to as you were writing Foxfire.
Not while I was writing. I, of course, listened to it many times. And I won't say which piece you're talking about just in case that spoils things for people in the audience. But, of course, I've listened to it. And I actually first heard it performed in high school at a speech competition as poetry, which was interesting. And that was my introduction to that particular figure. What did I listen to while I was writing? There were songs that I listened to while I was at the gym or while I was kind of like piddling around the house before it was time to write. While I was writing, that would like get me into the mindset. So there were songs like by Josiah and the Bonnevilles, I Am Appalachia. That song, I will say that's one of the only songs that I listened to while I was writing, and that was the scene at the end with Matthew. So that song specifically I had on repeat while I wrote that particular scene. Do I? Have you listened to the song? Yeah. Yeah. Yep, does me too. Lay my body in the sweet, sweet grass. Yeah. I know. See, now you're gonna listen to it and you're gonna be seeing the scene in your head and you're gonna be like, you asshole. Tons of Tyler Childers and all of those, but again, to get my head in the right space. But what I listened to while I was writing, so I like to try to kind of immerse myself in place as much as possible. So like I have a candle, like I worked with the librarian's candle company and developed this like custom scent that was like what it smells like in that valley in Foxfire. So I smell that. But wherever I was in the story, I'd pull up YouTube and I would put what that place should sound like on in the background. So like when I was at May Miller's dairy farm, it would be wind over wheatgrass in a field. with like mountains in the distance. So I wanted to hear exactly what that sounded like while I was writing those scenes. When we're in the deep dark woods with Earl, I'm putting deep dark woods sounds on. When the battle is raging, big thunderstorm sound, all of those kinds of things, so that I can kind of try to be in that space. So I didn't listen to music necessarily, but I did listen to a lot of wind over wheatgrass. Many, many hours of wind over wheatgrass. Anyone else? Really? Yeah. Yes. You've been taking a lot of notes. I'm very curious.
I think yours is more about the
No,
book.
I don't think so. My question is, have you ever done anything?
My last book was called The Dabbler's Guide to Witchcraft. Yes.
That's all I'm writing.
Yep.
I was gonna ask what's your favorite cryptid?
Ooh.
And did it make some type of appearance throughout?
Not yet. But I think my favorite in the book is probably a tie between the snallygaster or the squonk. Only because of what I do with them in the book. Jack plays with the snallygaster, which, if you know anything about snallygaster, it can, it lives up in the sky and, snatches, cows out whole, and Jack's like, oh, you're fun to play with. And the squonk line is just funny. If you know what a squonk is and its whole history about, it's so sad, just so unbearably sad, and it's it can cry itself a lake and
Doesn't
very...
it dissolve into weepy puddles
Yes!
when you look at it? Yeah.
Yeah!
It's great.
It has such deep body dysmorphia. It just hates the way it looks so much, and Verity cheered one up. So yeah, and I don't know. I like all of them. They're all weird, and I love the idea of North American cryptids because sometimes they're just completely made up just to create a tourist trap, and we went with it anyways. I love all of them. They're great. They're all fun. But no, my favorite hasn't made an appearance yet. Yes.
It's not so much a question.
Yes.
But it's a thought.
I love thoughts.
One of the
I have 6 of them a day.
I have gotten to a point as an old lady that reading young adult books and watching the hero be overpowered and the adults be so stupid has gotten so old. So what I love is that everybody was in the right place in this book. That she wasn't overpowered, that she was very powerful, but that no one was stupid, really, which is nice. I love that you created a magic place where she feels so real, and she learns, and I also wanted to say that it's nice to see the magic be in the world and not hidden from the world, where they have to hide and somehow, no one knows that there's all these wild animals. I love it.
Thank you. I was very careful and cautious, and I'm very glad it came through, about making sure that the people of the town don't come off as stupid, because it's really easy. It would be really easy to slip into, oh, those stupid Southerners. Oh, those stupid people from that small town. Oh, those small-minded people from that little bitty holler. And the thing is, I grew up in those places. I know those people. They're not stupid. They're some of the smartest people you'll ever meet. Are they gonna go into a university somewhere and give a lecture? Maybe not. Maybe not. But they are some of the smartest, wisest, most keen-minded people that you will ever meet. And what you never want to do is try to get one over on them. We have entire histories of country music back before it became Guns, God, and all of that in 2001. Back when country music was about the law better keep away. We have entire histories of country music in this country, Dolly Parton and Willie Nelson, about those people are smart. And they have a deep sense of fairness and justice and kindness, and protectiveness of one another. And I wanted those people to be the people that you met in the book. I wanted, which is, I grew up in those towns. I have my own problematic histories with some of those places. It wasn't always sunshine and rainbows for me, but I did want to show the good sides. And that was really important to come through. So I really appreciate that did. Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
So I have a question. I just have a thank you.
Oh,
For making.
if you make me cry.
That might make me cry.
Okay. Well, you can cry.
Because she had to work so hard to win the trust of the people who had been so badly traumatized already. And there were moments when I listened to the audiobook and I was listening to it and I was like, May, you are such. Why are you being so mean? Like, she just did this thing. Like, just thank her. Just thank her. And I was like, oh my God. But because you made her work for it, by the time I got to the end, like I was ready from ear to ear. I am weeping uncontrollably on my couch. I went through the whole journey with her, and I feel like I heard this person for what she struggled with, and the way that she had to win them over, and then she screwed up, and then she had to fix it. And it wasn't just like, oh, I'm sorry, I screwed up. It's all better now. She had to fix it.
I
loved that.
thank you. I think if you do not know these people, like if you aren't from this area of the world, if you didn't grow up near an industry town, like a Rochester, New York is an industry town. That town was devastated whenever the Kodak factory shut down, like in 2011 or so. There's industry towns all over the United States that if that factory, if whatever industry is in that town shuts down, everybody's screwed, right? In like a real deep generational way. If you aren't from one of those areas, it's really easy to get 2 or 3 chapters into the book and be like, well, these people are just mean. They're not, they're direct and they're honest and they've lived through some stuff. And if you stop to think about it for a while, May Miller is old enough that she remembers what that town was like when it was bodies for a mine. She remembers what that town was like when it was a coal mining town, when the husbands, the brothers, the sons were fed to the mountain, literally, because they went to the coal mine and, black lung and all of that. And then Earl comes along and does everything that he does to the town, and she deals with that for 20 years. And you want me to thank you for doing a little pixie dust with a cow? Absolutely not. No thanks. I'm good. I wanna see a little bit more from you. And it's really easy to read her as mean, but I just read her as honest, as a real woman who's lived through some stuff. But I also, I remember my granny. She went through the Great Depression. She went through some stuff. She was in those towns that used to be coal mining towns. My great-grandfather lost a finger, a couple fingers. And they're direct, they're real, they lived through some stuff. And it's not that they're gonna write you off forever, but they're not gonna trust you on day one. So thank you so much for that, I really appreciate it. We have time for one last question. Yes. Hi.
Hi, I'm a librarian and I'm a teacher, and
I love librarians and teachers.
so there's two questions. One is a thought and the other is a question. I love the book for the reasons that you mentioned, where it shows a lot of resilience on Verity's part, which is even more for my students who are middle schoolers to kind of learn and experience and see somebody dealing with somebody who's not friendly and isn't going to just open their arms and say thank you so much for helping my cow. Doesn't really care unless you can do that over and over and show that you're resilient. What did you want kids to learn and kind of take from your book?
What did I want kids to take away from the book? I cut my teeth on fantasy with Susan Cooper's The Dark is Rising series. I cut my teeth on Animorphs from Catherine Applegate. I grew up on books for 10-year-olds don't have to sound like they're for 6 to 8-year-olds. They can sound like they're for 15 to 18-year-olds, and you can read up. I wanted young readers to have a story where they felt challenged, where they felt uncomfortable at times, and they felt like they could work through that discomfort and come through the other side. I also wanted it to be a book where, like, you know, if you're that smart 10-year-old, you know, that overachiever kid, that you saw yourself in the book, you know, that you saw what it was like to be like, oh, you know, I've always been the smart kid, but now I have to level up. Now, you know, eventually the world's going to come and get me whether or not I'm ready for it or not. The thing that I've realized as an adult that I think I forgot for a little while is that kids are here too. Kids, if there's famine somewhere, kids are in that. If there's violence somewhere, kids are in that. If people are hungry, if people are going without, kids are in that too. And they need a place to process that on the page. You know, that's what stories are there for. They need a place to go through those things. And if what they're reading are cutesy stories for 6 to 8-year-olds, they can't always process those things. So I wanted to give them a place where if it's just a book about a witch that saves a town to them, okay. But for the kids who are going through some stuff, who've been through some stuff, you know, for those queer kids who are looking on the horizon and wondered what their life might have been like had they grown up in a different zip code, I want them to have a place on the page to process all of that and to see that they might one day fly away on a broomstick too. Thank you. I got through this without crying. I feel like, yay me. Yay Kelly Andrew. Everybody get up for Kelly Andrew. Thank you.
That was delightful. Dawn's going to stay right here. If you
I'm
want
right
the book
here.
signed, we'll just line up in that direction. We've got books for sale. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We gotta grab that picture.
Yes. 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 Yes.
I really want to look at the music section over there. I really do. Hello.
Oh, I'm tall. I'll just be over here.
Which orientation is your preference?
Gay. Stop. Oh, good, Sharpies.
Yeah, so many.